Elon Musk here for the future. It's Robert Phoenix and the Friday Farcast. Elon Musk here for the future. It's Robert Phoenix and the Friday Farcast.
And we're here. It is the Friday Farcast. I'm Robert Phoenix. 12:30 Central Standard Time or Daylight Time. And getting a little bit of a late start. I'm trying to, it's like, what am I going to do today? What am I going to talk about today? Oh, yeah, there's a debate. That's right. There's a debate happening. And instead of breaking down the debate, I thought what would be interesting for us is to look at the chart for the debate. When it started, the conditions, the whole nine. And what I'm going to attempt to illustrate here is that based on this chart, it is a futile and useless exercise. That is my thesis. Now, had they had the debate at a different time, a different day, under different conditions, well, we might arrive at different conclusions, particularly who might be winning or who might be losing. Now, when you go through the Twitter scroll, you've got your Andrew fanboys and you've got your Candy fanboys and fangirls. It's a really interesting mix as to who likes who, right? Nick Fuentes likes Andrew Wilson. And that's really because he can't stand Candace Owens. I understand Nick's animus. When he was on with Candace, I didn't like how she interviewed him. I thought her approach was biased, puerile. I expected more out of Candace with Nick Fuentes. I don't like where it went. And then Tucker interviewed him. It was a little better, but still had some weird, awkward moments. The more weird, awkward moments were on the other side of the interview where Tucker seemed to be a bit more dismissive towards Nick after the interview. And those interviews happened very quickly. Now, I'm not here to paddle for Nick Fuentes. I think he's a fed. I think he's really weird. I think he's got probably a very strange sex life. He might even be working for I don't trust Nick Fuentes. Is he talented? Yeah, hell yes, he's talented. Is he a good orator? Absolutely. Does he have a historical grasp of things for somebody his age? Yeah, he does. So Nick Fuentes has some attributes. I still don't trust him. And I felt like what was going on with Candace and Tucker during that time, it felt a little coordinated to me. And it felt like that they had to address the Nick Fuentes elephant in the room. And when Tucker and Candace talk about Israel, they're talking about Israel, right? They're talking about Israel. They're talking about Zionists. They're talking about, the nation state and some of the bad actors that support it. When Nick gets into the cracks, right, and starts talking shit, he goes beyond Israel and Zionists, and he'll just say it's Jews, right? And he'll make cases for how Jews are successful, and in many instances, Nick is not wrong, right? So there's a very fine distinction there. And I think what Tucker and Candace were doing was that they were trying to draw a line, like a clear line. Like, we don't hate Jews. Not like Nick Fuentes. We just have a problem with Israel and Zionists and the people who support Israel and Zionism. And I think they were doing that, number one, to clarify their message. That's number one. And number two, so that Nick Fuentes and other people who have an issue with Jews don't muddy their water. I think that's what that was about. They had to address the elephant in the room. And Tucker did a better job. Candace did not do a good job. So I think, number one, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Do Andrew Wilson and Nick Fuentes, are they on the same side? Do they believe in the same things? Maybe some. I've never heard Andrew Wilson talk shit about Jews. I've never even heard him be hypercritical of Israel. And Nick checks both of those boxes. So I think the alliance is more about his animus towards Candace Owens versus any real comradeship with Andrew Wilson. But when you go through the Twitter feed, what you'll find is the people who are pro-Candace people are claiming that she is whooping his ass. And the people that are the pro-Andrew Wilson people claim that he is whooping her ass. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really have any interest in watching the debate. Not even from a journalistic perspective. And the reason why is because, first of all, I don't think Andrew Wilson has any investment in getting to the truth of things. I think Andrew Wilson's biggest investment is winning debates. That's his biggest investment. I don't think Andrew Wilson really gives a shit about the truth. If he did, then his positions that he would take would be far more risky. And I would put him in sort of a rationalist Occam's razor camp. And when you're in a debate with somebody like that, it's very hard to argue subtle points, things that don't add up. Now we're kind of bleeding into the conspiratorial edge. It's very hard to argue those points. Because in order to argue those points, you're going to have all these dots that connect so that when you finally get to the point, you can see like how you got there, all the various parties involved and so on, right? There is very little prima facie evidence when it comes to conspiracies. I mean, here we are, it's 2026, and we're still arguing or kicking around who killed JFK. And you'll have people that are literalists, and they'll say, well, this guy did it, right? And he did it. And we know he did it because of the magic bullet, right? But what they'll really argue is well, okay, if Israel was behind the JFK assassination, and some people claim that's true, and you can make a very good case for it amongst other people, then the burden of proof is on that person to prove that. And you can say, well, Jack Ruby's name is really Jacob Rubenstein, and was part of the Jewish mafia on the strip club in Dallas. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But it's a big stretch right, to connect Jacob Rubenstein, aka Jack Ruby, to Israel, and David Ben-Gurion, who at that time was the Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, who, by the way, hated John F. Kennedy. And Kennedy was vehement about Israel not having a nuclear facility and an atomic bomb. I think the record shows fairly clearly that Kennedy was not a big fan of Israel. And yet the problem with all of that is that the Jewish mafia was very instrumental in helping Kennedy get elected. That's kind of on the record, right? There are Jewish mobsters, Italian mobsters who talk about votes. And yeah, I mean, we can get into the weeds with all that, right? But then, like, you would have to connect somebody like Bugsy Siegel to David Ben-Gurion. And Bugsy Siegel didn't even really like Israel. As a concept, he sort of detested it. However, when things got hot for him in the United States and he needed somewhere to go because he was Jewish and he had the right of return, well, guess where he went? He went to this place that he didn't really like. So this is what we deal with conspiracies. 9/11. Hey, it found a passport in the rubble. Look at that. It was one of the guys in the plane. Everybody else has been atomized, but they find the fucking passport. Oh, that's evidence, right? And we're still not settled with 9/11. Trying to get to the bottom of COVID, another conspiracy. And, we've got the godfather of COVID right there in Washington, D.C. He's right there. And what does he say 111 times? I'm taking the fifth. I can do it, Fauci. I've been on the advice of my attorney. I am taking the Fifth Amendment, and I will not answer any further question along this line. I do get Fauci. Okay, so what did that do? What did that solve? He walks out of the courtroom and gets in the car, and his wife starts flipping people off, right? So anytime you bring conspiracy into a debate, it is a losing proposition. Losing proposition. It's like trying to defend a conspiracy in a court of law. Good luck with that. Let's see how many judges will allow certain types of evidence to be presented, right? Look at what they did with 9/11. They had the 9/11 Commission. Almost all of it behind closed doors, some of it in front, all of it a sham. There you go. It's all been answered. It's the 9/11 Commission. Really now. So this is why I don't have a lot of interest in watching debates. It usually breaks down with one person who is trying to get to the truth and the other person who is trying to win the debate. And they are two very, very different perspectives. And in most cases, the person trying to win the debate versus uncovering the truth, they'll win. Because they'll find things that are unprovable. And when they find things that are unprovable, it makes the other person who has been building a case that is almost contrary or a contrast to the case that's being built for the public, it makes them look bad. Because this person is bringing something theoretically tangible, even though it can be completely crooked, right? Like I was on Twitter before the show, and they were talking about the the medical exam, also known as the coroner's report. And there was a woman in the comments who said, basically, well, that's an official document. You have to trust that. As if that is going to qualify as evidence. And I sat there, in disbelief. Coroners are some of the most fucking corrupt people in this country. I mean, corrupt. And they stick around for a long time. Like the guy who was the coroner in the JFK assassination, wasn't he involved in one of Trump's shootings? The one in Pennsylvania? Wasn't he the same guy? I'm pretty sure it was. I mean, this guy's been around for fucking ever, right? And the most famous or infamous coroner, I'm sorry, I don't know his, I could look it up. I just know who he is. He was the coroner for the Clintons in Arkansas when Bill was governor. And there were a lot of bodies starting to pile up. A lot of bodies. The Clinton body count started when he was governor. And that coroner was notorious, absolutely notorious for fudging the death results. What about the smiley face killer? We've had William Ramsey on here a number of times, and the coroners never get it right. They're always fudging the details. They're not being 100% about the condition of the body. It's like, why? It's like, why? Why do so many coroners, especially in this instance, play fast and loose with the facts? I don't have an answer for that. It's a rhetorical question. But that gives you sort of the mindset of some of these people who trust official narratives. Well, there's a medical report. It's an official medical report. You have to trust that. Really. So what we have with this debate is what I would call a social Rorschach, meaning if you are on one side of the debate, you're going to see one thing. And if you're on the other side of the debate, you're going to see another thing. If you are a Andrew Wilson fanboy, you're going to see that he's kicking her ass. If you are a Candace Owens person, you'll see that she's kicking his ass. And I've been through the feed. I've been following the debate through the feed. The other detail that seems to have arisen is that the moderator for the debate, Patrick Bet-David, is absolutely fucking useless. He's useless. As I get older, and hopefully wiser, I try my best to limit my beefs. Like if you'd caught me 10 years ago, watch my show or listen to some of the podcasts, I was beefing, and there were people I didn't like. In my mind, for a good reason. And most of the time, I was right. Right. And as I've let's say evolved, I've done my best to kind of back off the beef. Right. Don't focus on the beef. Focus on the meat. The meat being the content of the show. But every now and then there's a person that I just don't really like. And Patrick Bet-David is one of those people. I can't stand the guy. Now, you may like him, and that's okay. You may like it. You may like his guests. That's fine. I don't like him. I don't like the dude. I don't dig the dude. I don't trust the dude. And I've said this before, I always feel like I want to take a shower after I watch them. And the reason I don't like him is because I think he's a phony. He's a phony. You know, there's this video, he takes you around his house, his big, beautiful house in Miami. And, you know, it's like, look at me, look what I have, right? Whatever, you can do that. I've never been wired that way. It's like, you have to prove to us that you made it, man. You made it. You were an Iranian and you had to leave Iran, and, you know, you started getting the bodybuilding and you built an insurance company, and look at you. You're the epitome of the American fucking dream. And then you look into his insurance company and it is scam fucking city. Scam city. And I've broken down his insurance multi-level marketing model before, right? And hey, more power to him. He was very, very successful at it. But you know, I will say this: I tip my cat to the hustle. Tip my cap to the hustle. He had the hustle, but at the end of the day, he made a lot of money off the backs of people who thought they were going to make a lot of money with Patrick Bet-David, and they didn't. Hey, it's the American story. So even the acquisition of his wealth is kind of phony, right? And he starts off with valuetainment. I mean, what the fuck? Valuetainment? Valuetainment. It's like, you're going to get the, let me see if I can do it, Pat Bet-David. Oh, you're going to get the best value for your entertainment. Okay. And what he did, and again, I will tip my cap to the hustle. He bought guests. He had the money to buy guests. That's how these people wind up on your show. You pay them to come on your show. And he built an audience by paying for guests. And the money for paying for those guests came out of his MLM insurance scam. And that's how he built valuetainment. I don't necessarily have a problem with buying guests. If you have the money and you can do it and build a business, more power to you. Right. But that's how he did it. He basically, I think DJ Vlad's is kind of in the same model. And it feels to me like Pat Bet-David sort of cloned his show a little bit on DJ Vlad. Anyway, I'm just not a fan. And he's for me, he's a guy that will completely run cover for Israel all the time. And I have an issue. I have an issue with Israel. And I'm okay with it. What else about David? Oh yeah, Pat Bet-David's a Libra. So you would think, being a Libra, you'd be a good moderator, but from what I'm reading, he's just kind of useless. What a weird trio. Candace Owens, Andrew Wilson, Pat Bet-David. All right, that's my intro. Let's get into chat. Let's see who's here, and then I have the chart, and then we'll talk about the chart. Maybe we'll cruise through Twitter and catch a few strays, and then call it a day. All right, so let's see, who do we have here? Who of the faithful are here? Michael, Sister Nina, what's up, brother? There's Neil Smith. Nice Light Astrology, what's up, Rafi? Maya Rose, thank you, Felice. I agree, watching, and I see there will be no resolution. Both are annoying. Yeah. Watch 1 minute, couldn't abide Pat Bet-David. I know. You're going to have like a Carney Barker for your moderator. It's like just having him as the moderator is not serious. He's not. He's not serious. I don't know. I don't know who I would have had as a moderator. Somebody who knows how to fucking moderate a debate and has a little bit of gravitas. I don't know. I don't know who I would have. I guess they approached what's his name? Knowles, Michael Knowles. There's another guy that makes my skin crawl. Do you know who I would have had moderate that debate? Is what's his name? Matt, what's his name from the Daily Wire? I think he could have done a good job. I think he could have done a good job. I would have had that Matt guy. He would have been a good moderator. Or how about Judge Joe Brown? Now that would have been a good fucking show. Judge Joe Brown. He's a little long in the tooth. But let's see. Penny Time, the energy of the debate is rancid. I know, right? I mean, I generally like Candace Owens. I think she's really bright, pretty courageous. I find it amazing that she's a fucking baby factory. Is there some high strange around her and her husband? Maybe a little bit. But I would say, by and large, I think Candace is on the right side of things. By and large, that's my opinion of Candace. Do I watch her every day? No, I don't. If I had to sit down and watch her, could I? Sure, absolutely. And sometimes she's, totally brilliant. I really don't have a problem with Candace. Andrew Wilson, on the other hand, look, people don't always have to be likable. If they are invested in the truth and have some gravitas. Like there are people that, and if you're not likable, but you're consistent and you're truthful and you have some depth, I'm willing to deal with, a person not being likable. Nobody says you have to be liked. Andrew Wilson is unlikable, and I don't think he's truthful. His whole shtick around debate is not based on truth. It might involve uncovering something that's not true, but that's not the same thing. Right? It's uncovering the fallacy of an argument or a position. And I've seen him go against, like there are, if you were to study debate, if you were to take 4 years of your life and study debate, there are rules, right? There are rules, there are tricks, there are things that you learn about the science of debating, right? And one of the things that you learn is you begin to question the other person's meaning of a word, or you begin to question the context of a phrase, and then you take that context or you take that meaning, and then you try to put it in sort of its own hermetically sealed chamber and then try to define that. And I've seen this, right? And what happens is that people will begin to get bogged down into etymology, and not just the etymology of the word, but how it exists in a social context. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing? Right? I mean, what are we doing? And a lot of it is used to misdirect, buy time, weaken the other person's argument. These are all tricks that you learn. And if you're halfway smart and good at them, You can learn them. You can learn them, and you could be a relatively successful debater just by learning some of the, the tools of the trade and understanding sort of the basic function of rhetoric. And this is what Andrew Wilson does, right? This is his shtick. But when you hit him from a different place, right, from a different perspective, and there's evidence involved, the clearest example was his position on women. And he's been on this show at whatever quite a bit, pulls in a lot of eyeballs. It's mostly women, younger women who are, either leftists or liberated or socialist or whatever you want to, typecast them as. And, Andrew Wilson supposedly has very traditional values. He's the paleo Chicane or whatever the fuck he calls himself. And yet he's married to a woman who has kids from 3 different baby daddies, which is completely counter to the rules of Andrew Wilson's life, right? And so this one gal on this show brings it up. It brings up, hey, man, how can you espouse these values when you yourself aren't even living by them, as evidenced by your wife who's had babies of 3 different men? Fair game. And what does he do? He loses his mind, starts swearing at her, calls her a lesbian, and that she licks schniz. That was his famous role. You lick schniz. You lick schniz. And all of a sudden, all the rhetoric and all the little debate tricks just go right out the window, right? Right out the window, because you got him. You got him in a contradiction in his perfect little world and his perfect little life, and he's not even abiding by his own rules. And so he lost his cool. Ergo, he loses the debate, right? So even if you're schooled in this stuff, if somebody hits you, like in the right place at the right moment, at the right time, and you're not ready for it, you're going to lose. And the minute you blow your cork, you lose. That's the way it is. He's unlikable. If somebody was truthful, again, and had some gravitas and was unlikable, I wouldn't have a problem with him. I wouldn't have a problem with him. But he's not that. And so he's both like creepy, slimy, and unlikable. Let's see. Who else we have here? We now know who shot JFK. Some guys with guns. Case closed. Thanks for the clarification, Dead Wolf. Just my observations. God loves Israel. No. Which God are you referring to? The Great American Ruse continues. Yes. Let's see. PBD is a shiver looking for a spine to crawl up. Love that. He's a shiver looking for a spine to crawl up. Am I right? There's no point of getting a competent moderator for this. Penny, you might have a point there. I despise hopefully hypocritical Christian. I am a Christian hypocrite. Well, I'm glad you've come to that conclusion. We got Rock and Reality. Hey, what's up? You are still here. So Lynette's watching. Andrew is so ick. Sean Mike Kelly would be a good moderator. Don't know him. I'll take your word for it. He runs Digital Social Hour. Okay. Yeah, he's not moderating. He's just letting them go and fact checking when needed. So why do they even have him there? There was no they. Moderators were chosen by Wilson. Oh, okay. So he chose Pat Bet David. All right. What's going on? Brother Raw. Didn't know there was a debate. I might have to watch. Russ Winter would have been a great moderator. I don't know. I don't know if Russ would have been a great moderator. Maybe. maybe. You know, it'd be a great moderator, Judge Judy. She's still around. I'd love to see Judge. I mean, let's just take it to a whole nother fucking circus level and just bring Judge Judy in there. Matt Walsh, yes. Candace was done Daily Wire also. Yes, I know. Until she got excommunicated. Matt Walsh. Yeah, I think Matt Walsh would have been okay. He's solid. Daily Wire aside. Let's see. Never saw him before. And after 1 minute, I didn't like him. Barbara Boots here. My personal opinion is most people nowadays are not intelligent enough to actually debate. They can't even critically think or comprehend a nuanced conversation. Well, I think that that's true. But we have somehow evolved and de-evolved into this debate society. And bringing the astrology into it with Saturn and Aries, we'll have more of it, right? Neptune and Aries, well, it's the foggy mist of the debate itself. You know, you got Jay Dyer, you know, I'll debate anybody about Christianity and the Orthodoxy and Adam Green. And, you know, you get a bunch of young lions. All they want to do is debate. Are they good at it? I don't know. They sure have some fans, though. Andrew Lewis looks like Jon Stewart a little bit. His body language is quite interesting. Hand on his face the whole time, sort of cradling his cheek. Well, the reason he's doing that is because he doesn't have a fucking cigarette. That's why. His hand's got to go somewhere. It's usually here. So it's got to go somewhere. Hey, Olivia, what's up? The demon god Yahweh loves Zionism. Yahweh was a demon god, wasn't he? PBD was his second choice. Knowles was nominated without asking. Right. I know Knowles was kind of in the mix. But isn't that another Daily Wire person? Alex Jones as a moderator would have been fun. Don't you think? Alex Jones as a moderator? That would have been fun. Let's see. Not gonna lie, I'd watch it, right? Judge Judy would be fire. Are you fucking kidding me? Just wait. Let her finish. Who do you think you are anyway? Are you too good to show up here in a suit? Look at her. Look at how she's dressed. Are you too good to show up in a suit? Andrew Wilson has a uniform. Here's Andrew Wilson's uniform. Plaid, dark. He's always dressed dark. Dark plaid, right? Maybe slightly Pendleton or brown or black. And sometimes you'll see the white t-shirt. That's it. That's his uniform. And I believe that that's all intentional, by the way, because it lends gravitas. Will Andrew Wilson crash out? Nah, he's probably got like a nicotine patch. No moderate need. He couldn't get a word in. Judge Judy is a great idea. I don't think Alex just. I know. I was going for the Judge Judy. I don't know how the fuck old she is, but she would have been great. My favorite Judge Judy was when Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols was on Judy. I couldn't believe it. I'm fucking watching Johnny Rotten on the Sex Pistols on Judge Judy. And this guy, Robert Williams, who was supposedly going to play drums for Pill. He was also, I think, a bit of a comic book artist, was suing Johnny Lydon for kicking him off the tour and not paying him. Judge Judy sided with Johnny Rotten. Janine Pirro with a full box of wine. There you go. Should we put her hair in curlers too? It's so funny that Trump got really pissed at Janine Pirro because Janine Pirro ruled that the guy that was arrested for supposedly vandalizing the reflecting pool there, didn't do it. And he didn't do it. Do you realize what he was accused of? He was accused of taking an object and sticking it in the bottom of the reflecting pool and essentially ripping that object across the bottom of the reflecting pool for what, 10, 15 feet, something like that? Do you know that that is almost nearly impossible to do, even with the shitty coating that they put underneath it? He didn't do it. Do you know what they were doing? Before they filled it all back up with water, they were driving their fucking cars on the reflecting pool. Like, I don't know, maybe they had the presidential limo, or I don't know who was driving, but there are pictures of them driving on the reflecting pool. And it hadn't even really settled. And you wonder why? You wonder why it basically started to break into chunks. So now Trump is all pissed because that guy didn't take the fall. And Jeanine Pirro is catching hell. You don't piss off Trump, right? Just ask Carolyn Levitt. All right. I guess here's how it went down. She went to Trump. Am I still the press secretary? And he said, no, leave it. Leave it. Got it? Bad joke. All right. Let's just take a look at this chart. This is a 10:30 a.m. This was Nashville. That's when it started, because it went live in California at 7:30 a.m. And we have Libra on the ascendant, which theoretically, hey, balanced, fair and balanced. But, you know, you're just not going to get anywhere with this Mars-Neptune square and this Mars-Venus square, right? It's going to be bickering. And then the Mars-Neptune square, it's like, okay, you're going to put forth all this effort, right? All this effort, and where is it going to go? Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. That's the nature of the Mars-Neptune square, right? Neptune is literally like the reflecting pool that gets ripped and starts to drain. It is cleaving Mars. Now we're in the 9th house here, so we're supposed to get to some kind of larger truth, right? With the 9th house. Some bigger macro truth. It ain't happening. It is not happening. And usually with Mars and Cancer, defending a position is better than attacking a position. So in this debate, that whoever is better at defending a position or defending a point has the chance to perhaps make some headway, right? So playing defense in this debate might be useful and could give a person the upper hand. But even then, it's like any effort that's put forth by either person, any effort put forth by either person is just going to go nowhere, right? It's like a flat beer. That's the Mars Neptune square. And the other thing about the Mars Neptune square is like from the audience's POV, right? The people that are watching, interested, have a rooting interest in Andrew Wilson or a rooting interest in Candace Owens. That Mars Neptune square will not move the needle for either of them. It won't. If you're a Candace person and let's say Andrew Wilson has a few gotcha moments, are you all of a sudden going to drop your allegiance for Candace Owens? You go, wow, this Andrew Wilson guy really made a really good point there. Maybe I really, really need to rethink my relationship with Candace Owens. That's not going to happen with this Mars Neptune square. It's not. And if you're an Andrew Wilson person and Candace brings something, you go, yeah, why hasn't he really looked into this? Is it going to move the needle for that person? No, it's not. And that's part of the Mars Neptune square as well, right? Because if you look at Mars is the planet that is related to what? Heroes. When we think of Mars in culture heroes, they kind of go together, right? From the most mundane to sort of the most archetypal and mythic, right? So on a mundane level, like the guy who ran out into the ocean and saved that person from drowning and went to the White House, right? That is Mars. That is a Mars heroic moment. Right? We associate that with Mars. Why? Because they're in that moment, you don't really think, you just act, right? I'm just going to throw myself into this situation and I'm going to do everything in my power to save this individual, right? That is it's not mundane because he saved a life, right? But that's what I'm talking about with Mars. On a much grander scale, you can get into movies, right? Where, clearly there's a Mars-like character in a movie that, saves the day. He's an action hero or he's some sort of a mythic hero. Post World War II, we had Audie Murphy, John Wayne. Those are very Mars-like characters, right? Those are your culture heroes. That's what Mars does. I don't care what sign it's in. That's the nature of Mars. We associate Mars with a certain type of heroism, usually military, because that's the nature of Mars, right? So if you see Andrew Wilson as a culture hero and a culture warrior, you'll identify with him in that regard. If you see Candace Owens in the same way, you'll identify her in that regard. And the Neptune square, right, with that Mars, again, creates sort of a bifurcation and division. You will defend the person. Even if, let's say, there's a part of the debate where Candace, kind of loses the plot, right? The Mars Neptune square, you will still defend Candace Owens. And it's the same with Andrew Wilson. You will still defend him with the Mars Neptune square. And after the debate, right, you'll see people come out and say, well, Patrick Bet-David wasn't a very good moderator. If he was a really good moderator, he would have done X, Y, Z, right? Another Mars Neptune square. Blaming somebody else for whoever is not, carrying the day, right? So this Mars Neptune square is just problematic all around. It's just problematic all around. I don't think anything good comes out of it. Period. End of story. Now, we also have an inconjunct with Mars and Pluto. And to me, this one is really, really interesting. And I don't think the inconjunct is going to be either as visible or trackable in the immediate future. I see this Mars in conjunct with Pluto as having a more long-term effect. Like what happens in a month, 2 months? It feels to me like things emerge from this inconjunct that are hidden and not available right now. And it could be either evidence or testimony or something that comes up that ultimately winds up contradicting perhaps a very salient point or a point that was used to defend a position. But later on, the information comes and it's like it's an indefensible position. I don't think we'll see it yet. But it feels to me like it's something that will emerge in the future. It's like bubbling beneath the surface. Now, if you look at this chart, the other thing too is they're in Candace Owens' home. And she lives in Nashville, Tennessee. So she has Pluto in her fourth house during this debate. I mean, literally, right? Like that's where she lives. Now, she's a Taurus, right? But this Pluto is in the fourth house, and that's where she lives. She lives in Nashville. And they're in her home. So we're transposing it. But still, it's like it's a heavy burden for Pluto. Very heavy burden for Pluto. And I would keep an eye on when Pluto goes direct and the resolution of the inconjunct. So why don't we get that on our clock here? So we got Pluto going direct. Where are we? October 16th. It's a ways away. But that is a day that I would look at. October 16th. Well, we're talking about 2 months. 2 months. So I would say that something around that time emerges that is a very salient piece that either got overlooked or was used in a context that painted either Tyler Robinson and the event in a different light. I think the inconjunct is important, but I don't think we're going to see it right away. The other part of this inconjunct is something that I don't think we can see, but we can feel. And it's this hidden tension beneath the surface. And what I mean by that is that both Andrew Wilson, and I mentioned this a little bit before, and Candace Owens are poster children for people who have really, really strong feelings about them. Really strong feelings. There are women who hate Candace Owens. I mean, hate her. There are people who really do not like Andrew Wilson. You know, and he may be white and he may be conservative and they don't give a shit. They don't like him. Right? There are Christians who do not like Candace Owens. They hate her. There's this gal, Natalie Jean Beisner, supposed to be a Christian. I don't know, I guess I follow her. She's on my feed. Boy, does she hate Candace Owens. really hates Candace Owens. And for me, this is that Pluto in conjunct. This is that underlying tension, and it slots into a person's stereotypes, their biases. Oh, I hate that smart ass little black bitch. I hope Andrew Wilson shuts her the fuck up. I'm tired of hearing that smart ass little pickaninny black bitch. That's Pluto. That's the Pluto in conjunct. And you get the Andrew Wilson talk too, right? It's like, just follow Lionel. Lionel loves Candace Owens. Loves Candace Owens. And he calls him any number of words. And Andy. He calls him little Andy. I mean, the hate is real, man. The hate is real. And it's that Pluto in conjunct to Mars. And it's bubbling. The one thing about a debate, which I think could be good, is that a debate could provide an outlet for social tension. If you ever want to witness really good debates, go watch William Buckley and Firing Line and some of their debates. One of the greatest debates that I saw was the American author, James Baldwin, black, homosexual, more than likely a Marxist, angry, right? But at that time, as a social figure, beloved, because, that was sort of the beginning of, I wouldn't say DEI, but the roots of Black radicalism really take shape in the 1960s and 70s. And then eventually, and what's weird about it is that at that time, it's usually mostly men, right? You've got, Dick Gregory, comedian, activist, James Baldwin, Stokely Carmichael, Huey Newton, right? They're mostly dudes. And then you move forward in time and you get to Black Lives Matter and they're all women. It's like, wow, that's a sea change. Look at that. Right. But that debate between James Baldwin and Enoch Powell was a fucking great debate with William F. Buckley moderating. And so a debate like that acts as a opportunity to release the tension of social pressure. And when you had two people, and Baldwin was no dummy, but he was clearly playing to a crowd that was sympathetic to his plight. And at that time, Enoch Powell, his position was, if we let all of these, at that time it was Jamaicans, if we let all of these Jamaicans into England, we will experience rivers of blood. Now, he was wrong, but he was ultimately right. He was wrong in the sense that the West Indies culture actually integrated with the English culture. They were not a radical problem. However, subsequent migrations are proving Enoch Powell to be right. He just wasn't right historically at that time, but he was a very controversial figure. And he was very articulate. This guy, went to Oxford. He's a fucking smart dude, right? And James Baldwin was no dummy. And so you saw these two guys square off against one another. And I believe the judges ruled that James Baldwin won the debate, which doesn't really surprise me. But nonetheless, you had these very different points of view that were allowed to breathe. They were allowed to breathe. And what they were doing is that they were arguing the ideas. They were arguing the social condition. They were arguing the merits of government getting involved in trying to address the equality or the inequality of people's lives. These were debates that had high stakes. The issues of the debates were shaping the culture. This is not that. It's not that. And so Pluto here, also in the inconjunct, reminds us that we're dealing with something that has very little gravitas. We're trying to find the gravitas here. And we get wound up and swept up in a cult of personality. And I don't like her. Well, I don't like him. Right. And we're back in fucking high school all over again. And it's, the term clickbait, right? CLICK. Well, this is clickbait. CLIQUE. Clickbait. That's what this debate is. It's nothing but clickbait. And are you going to have any resolution with Venus and Libra squaring Mars and Cancer? Probably not. Probably not. The only way you could have some resolution is if somebody during the debate would be willing to backtrack and admit that they were wrong. And you think either of them are going to do that? No, because once you admit that you're wrong in the midst of the debate, then you will be judged the loser, period, end of story. And you could carry 98% of that debate. But if you have one point that you concede and you say, well, you know what? I might have been wrong about this. You're fucked, right? So then you do, everybody in debate does everything in their power not to have that moment. Distract, right? Diffuse, denigrate, whatever. Just never concede a point. And yet, with this debate, the person, I'll tell you this, the person who could concede the right point could come out the winner. But it has to be the right point at the right time in the right moment. And it may not be the factual, point that they're going to make or win on. It will be more about the moral or the conscience point, right? This is what I'm talking about. Because there is a strategy to that, right? Like at the right point in a debate, if you could concede a point where you were wrong and the person you've been debating with has just been a complete and utter asshole most of the time, by conceding a certain point during the debate, it actually makes you look more human. And you being willing to have some degree of vulnerability and fallibility. And if the other person continues to be a jerk and a jackhammer, that concession of a point will win people over. But that's the only way, I think, with this Mars-Venus square, that anything reasonable can come out of it. We got the moon in Virgo here. What the hell is it doing? Not a lot. Hanging out there, kind of singleton territory, sharing the inconjunct space with Saturn. So the moon in Virgo is going to be all about the details. The details have no place to stick. No place to stick whatsoever. And with the inconjunct with Saturn, I would think that both people would be trying to make points and sort of, establish authority by using facts and pulling up shit from the internet or whatever. It won't have a lot of validity. And let's face it, Saturn in Aries creates great bullies. It creates great bullies. It's like Saturn in Aries just wants to, overwhelm people, steamroll people. We can see it. It's sort of happening now. Politically, it's sort of happening now. Now, this in conjunct with the moon in Virgo might be a little bit interesting. In that there could be a factoid that could show up. Something, I think it already happened. I think Andrew brought up a tweet or an email because he's got access to all the TPUSA stuff. Just remember that. He has access to everything he can get from TPUSA, including Charlie's emails. And he's been holding back on this email where Charlie says that he was afraid of it. He was afraid that the left were going to come for him and come after his life. And that is a detail that was hidden. And so he brought that up in the debate. That's your moon in conjunct with Saturn. At least that's an example that I can give you. So think about that. He's had access to everything at TPUSA. Candace only has access to personal emails from Charlie and up to a point, right? We do have a grand trine, Venus, Pluto, Uranus. That's nice. Will it help the debate? I don't know. Are they going to sing Kumbaya and it's a small world after all? Yeah, and then we have, all the Leo stuff. And Leo wants to dominate. That's the nature of Leo. Jupiter, Mercury. You have a debate with a Jupiter-Mercury conjunction in Leo. Theatrical. Trine with Saturn, trine with Neptune. There's some potential there. But even the potential for that, I think, is completely obliterated by this Mars-Neptune square. Completely obliterated by it. And even the Neptune-Venus opposition, part of that T-square. There's no fairness with a Venus-Neptune opposition. And Venus and Libra is striving to be fair. There's no fairness there. And again, it's all about looking through a very subjective lens, which is what you're going to get with Neptune. If you think Candace is winning, and if you like Candace, you're going to think she's winning. If you like Andrew Wilson, you're going to think he's winning. There's no objectivity here. None whatsoever. And I don't think it will accomplish anything. And if Pat Bet-David was smart, he would basically say that it was a draw. And let them go off, feeling like they both got fucking trophies. This is how I would judge this debate. I would just call it, and I'm not even watching it. I'd call it a draw. And you know what that does? It keeps the story alive. It keeps the narrative alive. It keeps the bickering alive. It keeps all of it alive. Because if there's a clear-cut winner, then the story ends. It's shut down. And one side gets to gloat and the other side gets to lick their wounds and blame it all on the Mars-Neptune square. But at that point, it's over. Now, here's a question, and I believe this is a very ethical question to ask. How does a debate like this influence the trial of Tyler Robinson? How? It has to on some level, right? So let's say Andrew Wilson is the winner of the debate, who is basically arguing that Tyler Robinson's the guy and Candace Owens just makes up a bunch of stories. And now you're prosecuting Tyler Robinson, and now you've got some Andrew Wilson ammo in your clip. Can Tyler Robinson get a fair trial after this debate? I think it's a fair question to ask. And especially with Venus and Libra opposing Neptune, right? Venus, Libra being the scales of justice. Can he get a fair trial? I don't know. I don't think he can. The only thing that Tyler Robinson can do would be to plead guilty, just like Luigi Mangione just did. Plead guilty. See ya. I think that's probably what will happen. Won't even go to trial. The other thing that we may have overlooked a little bit here is this Mercury-Pluto opposition. And it feels so urgent, doesn't it? It feels so urgent. Coming in and also squaring Chiron too. Mercury-Chiron square. Wow. And Mercury-Chiron, Mercury and Leo, very sure about what they're saying. Very sure. There's a surety about Mercury and Leo, but it's not the best position for Mercury, right? And the Chiron square coming in there, not great. Not great. Being overconfident in this debate would not be a place I'd want to be. Not with the Chiron square. There's one other thing here, and it just popped in my brain with this Pluto-Mercury opposition. And again, I don't know how it would look or manifest, but this Pluto-Mercury opposition, it's a phrase that Russ likes to use. This Pluto-Mercury opposition to me smacks of black magic. And I'm not talking about Candace Owens. I'm talking about something going on behind the scenes in a very Plutonian kind of way, in a very dark kind of way. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I could kind of feel into it. Like there is sort of this underlying darkness. When you go back and watch the movie The Devil's Advocate, and Keanu Reeves has to go to court and defend this guy who's played by Delroy Lindo. And Delroy Lindo is he's a Santeria voodoo priest who sacrifices animals and chickens. And the city of New York is charging him with a bunch of stuff. And so Keanu Reeves has to go defend him. And Al Pacino tells him to go meet him. And so Keanu Reeves goes to this shop, this curio shop, and he's taken to this back room, and there's bloody, and Delroy Lindo's there, and he's getting ready to sacrifice. Right, pulls out a cow's tongue, and then he asks for the guy's name, and then he starts putting nails in this cow's tongue, right? And when Keanu Reeves goes up against this guy who is trying Delroy Lindo's character, he can't speak. He just keeps choking and coughing on his words. And eventually, Keanu Reeves connects the dots and figures out that Al Pacino set up a little black magic. I just see this Pluto hanging out underneath that Mercury in Jupiter, and that's kind of what I get. Now, somebody like get a cow's tongue and pretend it was Candace Owens about. I don't think it's a one-to-one thing, but there's something going on here. There's something darker going on. Let's take it to another level. Let's talk about Lush. Let's talk about Lush with Pluto. And there are people watching this right now, and they're so invested, right? Like their team has to win. That to me is fucking dark. Think of the entities that are feasting off of this. Oh, they're there. They're there. They're probably right in the room with those two, although Candace has a lot of Catholic stuff. But they're online, right? They're like hanging out. people listening are typing, no, go Candace, Candace. I mean, let's call it for what it is. A big fucking loosh harvest. There's your Pluto. There's your black magic. Right? There's your Archon's delight. Right there. And it's through the internet. It's Aquarian. And all that Leo, man, all that emotion, all that passion. Took me a minute to get there, but we got there. All right. I'm not sure how much more I have to say about this chart. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so yeah, Candace Owens doesn't have a birth time. What's interesting is that she does have Mars in Cancer. So she has a Mars-Mars conjunction. I would say that's pretty good for Candace. Just in general. Mars-Mars conjunction. She's also going through a Sun-Pluto square. She's got Pluto in Scorpio. She has Moon in Aquarius. Here, I'll show you the chart. No birth time. Mercury in Taurus, 29 degrees. Jupiter in Gemini, retrograde. There's that Mars in Cancer. So she is going through her Mars return. You would think that this would be a good transit for her. In normal circumstances, I would say yes. But with the Neptune square, that's her Mars currently squaring natal Neptune. Not great. Not great. Candace and I have Mars at the same degree. That's interesting. And she really typifies that Mars too, especially in the Sabian symbols. Candace used to be a liberal girl, and then she went to the conservative side. And then she was on a conservative team, and then she went to a different conservative team. And that Sabian symbol for zero Cancer, it's on a ship at sea. A sailor lowers one flag and raises another. So it represents the ability to change one's affiliation. She has that. So even though she's having a Mars return, I don't think it's optimal because Neptune is squaring her Mars. Not a great transit. Not a great long-term transit for Candace because that Neptune is going to be squaring her Mars for quite a while. And I'm concerned. Well, I'm not. Listen, Candace Owens is fucking rich, right? She's rich. She'll be fine. She'll be fine. But I'm wondering how she will fare after this debate. Like, will this debate be the beginning of Candace Owens' decline in terms of power? I'm throwing it out there. And it has to do with Mars. And it has to do with the Mars-Mars conjunction and Mars squaring Neptune currently. Something to watch out for. Definitely something to watch out for. Just true note in Pisces. It's interesting. Very interesting. A lot of Taurus. All right. That's all I got. Let's see. Where are we at in chat? Let's see. How did Karen Levitt piss off Trump? So I think it had to do with the fact that her husband got in Trump's grill because there was this weird thing with the planes and like the decoy plane and the Air Force One plane. And Carolyn Levitt was on the Air Force One plane, which was the plane that theoretically could have been shot out of the sky. And so her husband was pissed that she was on that plane and not on the other the plane that all the safe people were on. I think that started the beef. That's my sense. Let's see. Is her hubby a lord in the UK Parliament? No. The hubby's father is a lord, and so the father does not come from a bloodline. The father purchased his title, but the father is very, very wealthy. Natalie Hart, birthday curiosity. There is no birthday for her. I looked it up. People are talking Charlie. Nobody is talking Epstein. So Trump and Tom Blanchard are happy. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah, I've done I did a big breakdown on the Devil's Advocate, Trump's apartment, the Clintons. Like the Devil's Advocate tells you everything. Everything. And even the people in the Devil's Advocate, the actors in Devil's Advocate, they got some stories. Jeffrey Jones, who's in Devil's Advocate, eventually winds up being tried and convicted for child porn, essentially ending his acting career. Charlize Theron, MK Ultra, Alpha Kitten from South Africa, essentially participating in the murder of her father. And when I mean participating, she didn't pull the trigger, but her mother was there, and she was right next to her mother when her mother killed her father. And so she saw all that and sent her off into, a world of trauma. And just look at the characters that Charlize Theron has played. Keanu Reeves got a really weird background, man. Really, really weird background. He was born in, Lebanon? I believe he was born in Lebanon. What the fuck was Keanu Reeves' parents doing in Lebanon? And why was Keanu Reeves' father spending the majority of his life in a prison in Hawaii? Really interesting questions to ask about Keanu Reeves. I think his father probably was military and probably involved in anything from destabilization to drug running, right? And so Keanu Reeves, very strange, unusual background, strange, unusual guy too, right? Who else do we have in that movie? Al Pacino. Al Pacino's a weird fuck, really, really weird guy, right? So the players in that movie are just really, strange, checkered past, off the wall, but they tell you everything in The Devil's Advocate, everything. So again, if you're not familiar with the story, Keanu Reeves plays this lawyer named Kevin who lives in Florida, and he is never lost a case. And he has this guy who's a client, and the client is being tried for sexually violating a young girl, maybe 12, 13 years old, right? And that's his client. And he winds up getting his client off. Now, who do we know that did the same thing? Hillary Clinton. When she was a lawyer, that was one of her claims to fame. She got a child rapist, a pedophile off, right? Okay, so the other part of this, which is basically Keanu Reeves being a cipher of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton doesn't know who his father is. Like, I think he knows who his father is, but he really doesn't know who his father is, right? A lot of people in Arkansas believe, and I think with probably good reason, that his real father is Winthrop Rockefeller, because these rich guys go around and they impregnate women and then they kind of keep an eye on the kids, right? And his character in The Devil's Advocate has the exact same profile. The mother who doesn't know who the father is, right? From the South, instead of Arkansas, this is in Florida. And so the Keanu Reeves character is a cipher of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And that's where it all starts. And everything, and they tell you everything in that movie. Everything. I highly recommend it. Let's see. Sitting on the sidelines. Yep, I'm with you. Admitting wrong is an act of surrender in these debates. Yeah, I agree with that totally, Rick, which is why I brought it up. However, and that's why people don't do it. However, in the right moment, it could actually be like this is how it would work, right? You would wind up losing the battle, but winning the war. Like it would be more of a like, okay, in this moment, I will admit to something, right? And there's a vulnerability there, but you wind up in the long term being the winner. So it's losing the battle, but winning the war. And that's the strategy. But I agree with you. When you do that, you lose. Yes. If you watch the link posted, all this won't matter. Okay. Enoch was an intellect, but a suspect background with young boys. Well, of course. Of course. I'm just giving you, like, he and James Baldwin probably had, a couple of drinks and a couple of jerks afterwards. Who the fuck knows? I'm just using that as an example of the type of debate that used to exist. All right. Are we good? Are we good? I think we're good. Her husband is gay. Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard that as well. All right, I'm out of here. Thank you for being here and being a part of breaking the chart down. I hope you found it useful, especially on the astrological side. And I hope you found the commentary, at the very least, entertaining. Don't forget our good friends at Silver Botanicals, 20% off on all of their fine goods. You have 8 days to take advantage of that 20% offer. And Leo is the code you want to use when you check out. LEO. Free shipping on everything over at Silver Botanicals. Only the finest organic materials are used when they can find them. Highest grade quality of silver that goes into their nano silver technology. You will not be disappointed. And guess what? You support a local business and you support this show. All right, we'll be back on Sunday nights with Sunday Night Astro Live. Take care. God bless. Love you all. Bye for now.